All right, and we are live. Welcome in, everybody. I hope everybody's doing good today. I'm sorry if the audio is a little off. I'm in my new studio, so if you guys could just give me like a one on a scale of 1 to 10, how bad does this audio sound right now? I'd appreciate everybody informing me. But yeah, I'm gonna retweet my live stream and we'll get right into it. Is everybody doing okay today? Nobody's talking. What's going on? 9 out of 10 here, actually. Good, good, good. Five, a little low. Okay, so I'm just being quiet, which isn't the end of the world. Six, that's fine. Five. Okay, 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 okay. Okay. We can do that. We can do that. I hope that it's not super, super low. Let me see if I can turn up my mic volume here. Audio, mic volume. There we go. All the way up. Is that a little bit better? Hello, hello, hello. Tried to turn it up all the way that I could, so that's about as loud as it's going to get right now. My new mic and my new audio interface will be here by Thursday, so hopefully this is the last live stream I have to do with this little thing. This was the OG. I will be keeping this little mic forever. This is how I started, but I need to get into a studio quality audio setting here pretty soon. So that's going to be the goal. Eventually, that's what's going on. I hope everybody is having a fantastic day. Can I see where you guys are at? Where you guys are from today? I see hello from Uganda. Uganda. Let me see where you guys are at while I'm retweeting my live stream, and then we will go ahead and get right into it. We have a lot of updates to cover. It has been 5 days since our last live stream, so we have a whole mess of things to get into. Live now. Ba ba ba. Ba 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 ba. Ba 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 ba. There we go. And we are done. All right, let's go ahead and see where everybody's listening from. From Pakistan, Sweden, Netherlands, Portugal, Hungary, Alabama, Elk Grove, California, Iceland, Brazil, Estonia, your mom's basement. My mom doesn't have a basement. Canada, Ontario, Dallas, Texas, Bristol, UK. That's cool. You're from Bristol, mate. Holy Roman Empire. Sweet. I like it how half of the answers are like legitimate people actually talking about where they're from, and the other are people choosing the locations that are either mythological or completely, ridiculous. LPR, Morocco, South Africa, Florida. There we go. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get into it. I'm going to take us right over to the map today. As you can tell by at least the thumbnail, this was sort of the prediction. We're going to talk about this, but I had a prediction that I posted about 2 weeks ago. It's one of my prediction videos. You can go find the link in the description of this video if you wanted to watch that after this episode. And really what I talked about in that were these very vulnerable areas on the Ukrainian front that the Russians would, you know, benefit greatly from if they were to push in this region during the muddy season and into the winter months, because of how thin the Ukrainian lines are in some areas of the front. So I'm going to take us right over to the map, and we are just going to go over all of the updates. In particular, we have seen quite a bit of movement up here in the Kursk region. My mapping, again, is always going to be slow in this region, and it's always going to be just a little off. I am always going to underestimate what both sides are doing here a little bit, just because, the lines are not very strongly defined in this region. There's a lot of, you know, uh, gray zone all over the place here. There's a ton going on in like these areas where there's a lot of fighting, but we don't know where the lines are. So I'm just giving you guys a rough picture of the situation in Kursk. And as you can see, my map isn't even totally up to date with the Russian advances, but the Russians have been advancing. They're putting a lot of pressure on Struzda, as well as a lot of pressure on this backside over here, making some pretty significant advances. So Kursk is becoming a absolute pit for the Ukrainians now. I had talked about this as being the cranky, an over-exaggerated cranky style operation, or a 2023 counteroffensive situation around Robotany, right? You're just pushing manpower into a salient, trying to hold it. You're not achieving any actual objectives. This manpower is being degraded at a much higher rate. The attrition in the Kursk region is higher than anywhere else on the battlefield, pretty much, because you don't have strong fortifications, you don't have clean logistics lines. You don't have any sort of air defense. We've seen Russian heavy strike drones like Orion and Inkovits doing a lot of damage with ATGM fire, basically. So if you guys think back to the early stages of 2022, when Ukraine had some of their Bayraktars still operating, or if you go further back, what I'm really comparing this Kursk operation to for the Ukrainians is sort of the 2022 Armenian-Azerbaijan war and Nagorno-Karabakh. That war was just the trademark of that war was these terrible drone strikes on troop accumulations. And something that the Azerbaijanis did that the Russians don't do is that the Azerbaijanis would literally ignore military equipment and just go for human casualties with these strikes. The Russians are focusing on vehicles. I mean, sometimes they'll hit troop concentrations and stuff like that, but it's beginning. Kursk is beginning to look very reminiscent of that 2022 conflict because of the use of these strike drones now. Unlike we've seen throughout the rest of the war, because Russia can't operate these drones in areas that have decent air defense, because they're just big, fat, slow-flying targets in the sky, expensive targets in the sky that get shot down, as we saw with the Bayraktars that Ukraine had at the beginning of the conflict. And as we see, like with the MQ-9 Reapers that the Houthis are regularly shooting down. These drones are really, really good at like global war on terror style fighting when your enemy doesn't have air defense. That's the situation for the Ukrainians in Kursk, and they are paying severely for this. Russian strike UAVs have been operating around the clock, and this pocket now is getting to the point where if nothing is done pretty soon, the Ukrainians are just going to get forced out, which is going to be really, really negative for the PR aspect. But what you could actually begin to see now is the Russians pushing into the Sumy region. Remember, all of this area has been evacuated of civilians by the Ukrainians before the Kursk operation really began in earnest. And then during the Kursk operation, they continued to evacuate. We could see the Russians step back over into Sumy, and they might have already done that along these lines. The border of the country is not necessarily what's the most significant, defining line. If the Russians want to cross the border, they just will. And we just recently got a video. It's a 5-minute video of Russian SOF conducting ambushes, FPV strikes, all behind enemy lines. And I believe that a portion of that came out of the Kharkov and Sumy northern region, just like the previous time the Russian MOD has released a compilation of Russian SOF activity, special forces, basically Russian special forces activity. It's always, you get the videos like 4 months after the season is done, so we get summer 2024 activity in October. OPSEC has been, the OPSEC of the videos don't matter anymore. We get these videos, and you see that there are likely Russian DRG units operating in Sumy regularly, operating all throughout the Kursk region, causing a lot of trouble for the Ukrainians. This situation is becoming so negative for Ukraine now that personally, to me, it's not even worth holding it anymore. If you would have asked me like 2 or 3 weeks ago, I would say that the Ukrainians are going to hold on to this as long as they can for political reasons. Now, there is no political reason to hold this anymore, and really starting to sense that from the Ukrainians themselves, the way that they're talking about Kursk, the way that soldiers are talking about the situation. It's really, really poor. So keep your eye on this area. This is probably going to close relatively soon, just because of how desperate the logistics situation is becoming and how tight this pocket is becoming for the Ukrainians. And then you got to remember, they're getting hit by dozens of glide bombs every day, getting hit by these heavy drone strikes, as I mentioned. There's still loitering munitions, FPVs. It's just a very hostile place for the Ukrainians to try to hold. Okay. Moving down to the Sinkivka-Kupiansk area, we got some very, very big news from this region. The Ukrainian armed forces have announced mandatory evacuations for a number of villages around the Kupiansk area, and it's very clear why. The Oskal bridgehead right here is about to collapse. It's getting weaker and weaker by the day, and you might not be seeing a massive advances by the Russians. However, you are seeing significant advances in particular directions, and the Ukrainians' inability to hold basically vital logistics lines and stuff like that. So it is likely now that the fighting has entered into these settlements right here of Hushkivka and Kolazynivka. These two villages right here probably now have Russian presence in them. This line has been cut, so now we have two separate pockets. The smaller one that's supplied by Kupiansk. This pocket is very tight for the Ukrainians. And then we have this southern pocket, which is also becoming very tight for the Ukrainians, considering how wide the Oskal is in some areas over here, right? So, yeah, this area is one of the areas that I've often talked about Ukraine benefiting greatly from if they actually retreated, because there's really no military sense in holding, especially this top pocket. Like, you can make an argument that this bottom pocket can be held because it's preventing the Russians from reaching Liman and Izum and stuff like that. But up here, there's no reason to be holding this anymore. And the Russians are now getting into Kupiansk proper. As soon as they're into the city and the battle for the city begins, this entire pocket is basically just going to have to close. And we are getting very close to that critical point with a Russian advance from Sinkivka down into Petropavlivka here. And they are very close to interdicting this road. If this road is cut off, this entire pocket just collapses. So we are getting very, 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 very close to the Battle of Kupiansk beginning again. This time, however, it will be the Russians advancing on Kupiansk from the east instead of the Ukrainians advancing on Kupiansk from the west. All right. It's a good time to take a second. If you guys want to see more of my content, because we, if you guys want to see more of my content, go to the links in the description. You will find my Telegram, my Twitter, my Patreon. You can find a lot of content there, and there will be a new Patreon video coming out this week. I finally have enough combat footage that I'm going to put one together, and I'm going to work on the audio on that so that you guys get a much better listening experience instead of hearing the videos and everything. So I'm gonna really dive in deep on some combat footage here pretty soon. So go check out that. Remember, you can sign up for free at my Patreon account or on my Patreon, and you will get access to all that content for free. If you do wish to financially support me there, if you are able to, I very much appreciate it. My work is at the behest of your guys' contributions. I do not get paid by anybody, and I will never get paid by anybody for the information that I put out. I don't believe that that's a good thing. I think that corrupts people's ability to be truthful and honest. I'm not going to let that happen. So your support is very much appreciated. If you guys have questions for me to answer live on stream, you can make sure that those questions get answered by asking through Super Thanks. And if you guys want to just ask questions, you can do that, and I will get to them maybe in the chat if I get over to see them. All right, let's get back to it. Thank you for that little advertisement. That's the only advertisements I do, guys, because that's just me advertising myself. So I very much appreciate all of your guys' support. Even if you're just here watching, a simple like. Oh, did I move this? No, I just moved that one. Okay. If you guys... I lost my train of thought. Sorry, this bugs me. See, do you see how this is just like a little off right here? I clicked it on accident and moved it, so I'll have to fix it later. But good enough for government work. All right, down here south of Nevelsky, along the Zhibyets River, the Russians continue to push the Ukrainians behind the river, and this situation is starting to look very, very poor for the Ukrainians around Terny and Yampolivka. And guys, this is sort of the cascade that I'm talking about. It's just slowly over time, this whole pocket is getting tighter and tighter, and everything's getting restricted. And now you can see that this Zhibyets pocket right here is very, very, very tight along these reservoirs. And what this means is once Terni and Yampolivka fall, pressure on Zakharin is going to increase tremendously. Pressure on Torske here is going to increase dramatically. And then this forestry will fall. Once this forestry falls, that's when you're going to see the progress in the Seversk salient begin. I talked about this advance that occurred here, the capture of Horivka by Russian forces, and the potential presence of Russian forces in Serbianka. This was pushed back because it's on the low ground, so this was updated and pushed back a little bit. And then a Ukrainian counterattack in this region put Verkhonominsky in a 50-50 sort of situation. Still a lot of pressure on Bilohorivka here, and the Russians are trying to get onto this high ground to basically put an end to the Battle of Bilohorivka. But the Ukrainian positions in this forested area right here and this area right here on the high ground are extremely strong, and it's going to take a good amount of time for the Russians to get through. How far are the Russians from Kiev? Literally? I mean, let's see. How far are they from Kiev? Right here. 60 miles at any given time. But if you mean like realistically, how far are they away from Kiev? I would say a year. If the current trends continue the way that they're continuing right now, I don't think that the Ukrainian armed forces are going to last another calendar year, and we should see the Russians enter into Kiev if they wanted to enter into Kiev, but I don't think that that's the goal. So I don't think that they're really going to make it to Kiev because unless there's a full government collapse, I just don't see that happening. I don't see a need for it. I don't see a want for it. Thank you for your question, though. All right. Moving down to the Chasiv Yar area, Russian forces have crossed the canal here, east or west of Ivanivsky, south of Chasiv Yar, and have captured this important crossroads right here, allowing them to eventually branch out, maybe close this pocket right here, and then push into Chasiv Yar from the south through this forested area. Again, this is another important advance, not overly significant to the grand scheme of things. Sorry, I just had to move this. Not overly important to the grand scheme of things. However, it is tactically a kind of a significant advance because it opens the door for further advances potentially. And remember, this is what I had talked about right here. Again, obviously much bigger, but pushing for Stepochke is the overall goal, and you guys can see that. Now the Russians are crossing and pushing on Stepochke, which is the relative high ground in the region. It's going to allow them to put a lot of pressure on Toretsk, a lot of pressure on Konstantinivka. Okay. Moving down to the Toretsk area, not a ton of news coming out of here. A lot of heavy fighting is going on in this area in the industrial zone and for these Terekons. I imagine the next update we're going to get is basically going to be the center of this city falling. The industrial zone and the Terekons first, and then probably these high-rise buildings over here. And then the last holdout will be this last industrial zone on the northern end of Toretsk. Down here, we have a small Russian advance, just a geolocation of Russian forces in these buildings right here. Most likely, it represents this entire area, but until we have confirmation of that, I'm just going to leave it as this. Just one little small advance, not a ton of action in this salient right now. All right, moving down to the Pokrovsk area. We have a Russian advance along the railway here. Some sources are saying that more of Suki Yar has been captured and more of this village right here. I'm just being very cautious about my updates. I think that the gray zone and the ability for one side to get pushed out is kind of high here. So we could definitely see a Ukrainian counterattack being successful. Remember, the Ukrainians have Pokrovsk just behind this advance. Excuse me. Just behind this advance. So if we come in and look, you can see that, I mean, you have Minhorod here. This is easy staging for the Ukrainians. It's going to be hard for the Russians to directly push into this area. However, this advance would show that the Russians are still attempting to push in this area. But as I've said, this is the progress in this area was basically forced to stop by the massive amount of Ukrainian rotation. The reason why we saw so much progress through so many of these defensive lines was because of Vovchansk and then Kursk, right? Those really opened the door for the Russians to push a ton in this area. Once the realization came that the Ukrainians, if they lose Pokrovsk, they're going to lose half of their steel, production in their country. Basically, half of their coal, I think, is mined here significantly as well. That this is just a huge loss for the Ukrainians. They had to defend this area, and they have moved a lot of reserves into this area. So any progress here is pretty significant for the Russians, just because we should be seeing almost no progress in this region. All right, so the Russian forces have sort of pulled out of this side of Seledove. It's really hard for them to push off of this Terrakon across these open fields with all this structure here, all these high-rise buildings and everything. It's very difficult. So the Ugledar approach has been chosen. They are going to surround the city, which makes perfect sense. And you can see that the Russians are very close in all aspects to doing that. Here to the south, the logistics line that comes from Kharkovka, has been physically cut by the Russians. This is important because a lot of the supply would be coming from the south. Any supply coming up from Toretsk and Pokrovsk is likely not making it through this area without coming under mortar or ATGM, artillery, or drone fire. So very tight logistics here. And then the final path is back straight through Hihorivka back here. But as this Russian advance continues along this treed area right here, this tree line, this road will become untenable. So logistically, the situation in Seledove is getting bad. And again, the Ukrainians are finding themselves in another encirclement, which is not where the Ukrainians want to find themselves. All right. Hello. Hello, Golden Goose. Golden Mongoose. Holy cow. All right. Okay, down here, we have not seen any more, we at least haven't gotten any news of any more Russian progress. Remember, I told you that the Ukrainians had to hold this at this triangle right here at all costs, or they were going to sacrifice this entire pocket. And that's looks like what the Ukrainians are trying to do, hold this area as much as they can to prevent this entire urban conglomerate right here from collapsing. One of the last remaining strong defense lines, it's in a similar situation as Seledove. Seledove, Kharkovka, and these areas right over here are really some of the last strong defensive lines in the east. And once they fall, the Russians, like I said, are going to have a field day back out here in the open. All right, moving down to the south. Russian forces have continued to progress through Ostrovsky here. Again, just making the situation difficult for any transport along these roads to the south. So the logistic situation is getting narrower and tighter for the Ukrainians in this area. And I talked about this Y area right here from the Vovocha River, Y right here, this is almost complete, and then Y up here should be complete sometime soon, will be the end of this push, because of the massive fortifications that are defending the crossings now, right here and right here. It's going to be very hard for the Russians to push into Kharkovka from the east right here, or into Kharkivka from the south. So expect most of the focus to be on this backside and collapsing the pocket in that manner. And again, I will put this down just so you guys can see sort of my prediction of how I thought that was going to go. And it is sort of heading in that direction. It's just you can't account for what the Ukrainian armed forces are going to do in terms of their ability to rotate reserves when we don't have a clear definition of how many reserves the Ukrainians even have available. All right, we got another question. Just wanted to show some support. Love the reports. Easily the most informative of the mappers. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I don't know if that's necessarily objectively true, but if I am the best mapper for you, I very much appreciate that commendation, and I will continue doing my damnedest. Thank you so much. All right, Maximilianka Nivka here. The craziest name, we just see a small Russian advance capturing this sort of warehouse buildings. I doubt they much exist anymore. But just another advance in the direction of Horhovke, putting more pressure on the logistics city itself, which again compromises a lot of this southern front right here if a significant amount of pressure is put on the city itself. All right, moving down to the Ugledar front. Guys, remember I talked about, did I keep the, yes, I did. So this was the, according to the Ukrainians, this is sort of the line of sight that the capture of Ugledar provides for the Russians. And we can see that the Russians are now beginning to progress out of Ugledar, capturing pretty significant chunks of land. You're looking at something like 6 square kilometers right here. So, you know, the Russians are really beginning to force out of Ugledar and put a lot of pressure in the southern area, forcing a massive Ukrainian response as well. So now you can, let me turn this off real fast. So now you can see that the Ukrainians are dealing with an Oskol River region, you know, right? There's a fire up here that they need to put out, or they need to address. Whether they're going to leave, I don't know. But there's some major issues developing in this region. And then also down here, you know, you have the Battle of Toretsk, which is a fire that's going on. If they can't lose Toretsk, if they lose Toretsk, pressure on Konstantinivka is going to become incredible. Chasiv Yar is going to be put in a much worse situation. This entire pocket down here will probably close. Toretsk is vital for the Ukrainians, so there's a fire there. Obviously, a lot of pressure on the Pokrovsk front. There's a fire there. Seladove, Hrinki, this is one big fire. You have two massive encirclements developing around two key defensive cities in the south here. So that's not good at all. And then as you come down here, the entire 0532 now is becoming basically completely passable for Russian vehicles without fear of harassment from artillery or drones or anything like that. So a huge logistical improvement here to the south, and you guys are really going to start to see the benefits being reaped by the Russians for securing this logistics line. And they will come in the form of advances like this north of Vadyan, like this outside of Ugledar, and then along this road from Pavlivka up to Velika Novoselka, we will continue to see Russian progress as we have seen right here. The Russians have advanced out of Zolota Niva and are progressing towards Velika Novoselka. Now we're getting into sort of what I was talking about, right? We're really getting into the prediction that I made 2 weeks ago. Again, that link is in the description of this video if you guys wanted to go watch that. I talked about these crossroad villages, right? The 3 crossroad villages. You can see them on the thumbnails. We have one right here in Velika Novoselka. We have one right here in Holyapolye, and we have another down here, Orikhiv. So these areas are the 3 settlements that I said would likely be pushed on the southern Donetsk and Zaporozhye front. Remember, Zaporozhye starts right here on this dotted line. So technically, Velika Novoselka is in Donetsk. It is the southern Donetsk front, but I like to think of this whole southern line right here as sort of interconnected. They run along the same logistics paths and stuff like that. I cut it off at Ugledar, and I go Ugledar up and then Ugledar west. That's sort of how I do it in my brain, just to think about the situation. But this is these advances right here are more significant, because what this is doing is going to begin to put a lot more frontline pressure. You know, there's a difference between the pressure that the Russians can put on a town when they are within, you know, 10 kilometers versus 20 kilometers away. Like glide bombs and stuff and artillery are good, but they don't clean up an area as significantly as you know, drones and mechanized assaults and stuff like that. So the Russians are now looking at about 15 kilometers from Velika Novoselka, still a decent chunk away. But this progress is going to come a lot quicker, right? It's going to be like it's going to be chunk progress because of how the fields are set up. Are you done? My dog was itching. This chunk progress is going to really start to add up. You're going to start to see like this area right here just fall, and then the pressure will mount on Velika Novosilka. Same goes for down here, Holeapolie. The Russians are going to begin pressuring all of the roads coming in and out, and I think that they've actually found a weak spot right here north of Stepove. And they have captured the village of Levdine. It's not really a village; it's sort of just this like spot on the map, a little farm. But more significant is the territory that was captured. You're talking about 8.22 square miles, which is something like 20 square kilometers in one chunk gain, right? So we're seeing much larger pieces of the map going to the Russians and a much weaker Zaporozhye line, as well as the activation of the Russian forces on this line. So two big advances here. There is some question about this advance that we talked about last time. Half of the mappers have it as the Russians were pushed back, and half of them have it as the Russians are still over here and potentially expanding. So I'm just going to hold off on this. This is sort of a gray area right here, but I do think that this advance was the least important. The more important advances are going to be on Orikhiv, because you want to get access to these roads, right? So Orikhiv, Holeapolie has 5 paved roads that connect to it, and then Velika Novosilka also has 5 paved roads that go into it. So these are the important areas, and what I'm expecting to happen now with, because what I can't tell through my analysis is I can't see where the Ukrainians have force concentrations, right? I can see like a brigade map. I can see some ideas, and there's been a geolocated battalion here, so the brigade is technically here, but you don't know how strong that brigade is. You don't know what attrition they've been taking. You don't know this, that, or the other. So I have a lot of blind spots when it comes to the tactical analysis of this conflict. However, strategically, it was very clear to me that the most prevalent options for the Russian offensive was not somewhere, Kursk or Sumy, which is still a potential. They could go in these directions. I'm not saying that they're not going to, but really, if you wanted to stretch the Ukrainians out and force them into a defensive area that does not benefit them at all, this southern front is where you're going to do that. And you can continue to stretch them out. You can, you can stop advancing over by Velika Novosilka and start advancing on Orikhiv, force a troop rotation, and then begin in Velika Novosilka again, right? Pull, push, pull, push, pull, stretching out the Ukrainian forces. That should be the Russian goal. And I believe that the Russians are going to try to progress further north here through the Donetsk and Zaporozhye Oblast and try to reach this road right here. Then begin to take this road both east and west, putting pressure on Velika Novosilka and Holeapolie down here eventually. After, it's going to be more like putting pressure on this string of settlements right here first, but Holeapolie is the end goal for these offensive operations. It doesn't necessarily mean that the Russians are going to continue here, but we can see that the activation is very much in line with my prediction that this is going to be the area where the Russians are going to force the Ukrainians to defend these basically little nothing villages. Sorry, I am very thirsty. Yeah, so you can see that these villages are, all of them are nothing. We have no significant structure. They're all farm villages. Even the big ones like Holeapolie, you can see that there's almost no structure in these towns outside of residential houses, right? So not great for defense. Easily bombed to an oblivion. So yeah, this is the area where the Russians want to force a massive Ukrainian rotation, get them out in the open, and pick them off with extreme prejudice. And that's what we're going to see. Especially, I think the main push is going to be for Velika Novosilka, just to really wrap up the entire Donetsk area, because this is where the majority of the Ukrainian army is. So if you can put a lot of pressure here, force the Ukrainians to leave, you get them out of their defenses, and you can potentially begin a rout. So yeah, I think that is all of the advances we have to talk about today. Awesome. Possum, everybody. 34 minutes? No wonder my mouth is dry. Holy hell. Good golly. Okay, gotta fix my chair a little bit here. Oh, I froze? No, but you can hear me. Okay, so it's just my camera. Awesome, awesome. That's fine. Na, 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 na. It's always my stupid camera. Sorry, everybody. Hold on. Give me a second. Coming back. Don't worry. It's coming. Give it a second. Ah, there we go. We're back. We're back. Guys, I'm telling you, it's my USB thing. I don't know what it is about some of the USB connections that I have, but just at a certain point, it'll just like flip and it just turns off, and all I have to do is unplug it and plug it back in, and it works. So, I'm sorry, guys. All right, all right, all right, all right, all right, all right. We are done with the updates, though. That was a perfect time for me to freeze, right? That's that was the perfect time right at the end of that whole spiel. So, all right, I have a few articles that I'm going to go over real quick because we have some developing stories. But if you guys want to go ahead and start getting some questions in, I'm going to do a little bit of a Q&A today with you guys. Okay. So we have this ongoing story, right? This main topic that I wanted to talk about today, with in regards to the articles that I chose. We have this very, very annoying story that comes up, and this has been a continual propaganda tool by the West, right? Implicating Iran, implicating China, implicating North Korea in Ukraine, the war in Ukraine, as a propaganda tool, right? To try to develop this axis of evil, if you will, this boogeyman, this enemy, and it is sort of happening, right? You are seeing these military alliances being formed, these political relationships strengthening. The economics of the situation are also improving for both sides. But the title of the article is North Korea sending citizens to help Russia military fight in Ukraine, Zelensky says, right? So why are we listening to Ukrainian intelligence for anything? For anything, right? Why? We should never take anything they say at face value. We should never. I mean, same goes for the Russian MOD. You should always be skeptical of all of this stuff, and the media is just running away with this because it's sort of, um, I don't know. It gets clicks, right? Oh, the North Koreans are sending troops to help Russia. No, that's so dumb. That's so dumb. Russia does not need any help, first and foremost. Let's just say that, period, right? Russia doesn't need military support from, this looks gross. I don't want to look at that. Doesn't want military support from, or it doesn't need, like, manpower support from North Korea. The only thing I could ever see coming out of this is that North Korea is sending like engineering units or some advisors just to get an idea of what modern combat is looking like. But this whole, Pyongyang is sending thousands of soldiers to help Russia in the war is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. If you have volunteer battalions or something like that, maybe that are going just for money, like that might be a thing. But it's not like Putin is going to North Korea and being like, "Hey, I need guys to come and fight in my war." That's not the situation. This is just another massive propaganda story, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit. So, North Korea is sending its citizens to help Russia's military fight Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky has said, increasing concerns about the alliance between Moscow and the secretive state. The secretive state. I love the language that you use, or that they use when they say, when they talk about these places. Russia's full scale invasion, the secretive state, the this, the that, the other. It always removes um our liability for the issues, our the causality for some of the issues that we're seeing. Do you want to know why North Korea is a secretive state, quote unquote? Because they've had US sanctions on them for 70 years, and they've had to self isolate or basically be destroyed. That's why they're a secretive state. So it's very funny when you hear this sort of manipulative language used. Ew, I don't want to look at that. Stop. Um, in his daily video message on Sunday, the Ukrainian president said, "We see an increasing alliance between Russia and regimes like North Korea. It is no longer just about transferring weapons. It's actually about transferring people from North Korea to occupying military forces." That is a lie, right? That's just a lie. And they're going to keep lying, and they're going to run with this story. And it's going to be another distraction. Another reason why the West is losing is because North Korea is helping now. Haven't we been saying for decades that North Korea is this backwards little shithole country that has nothing going for it? It's technologically stunted. It's culture. Everybody's starving, this, that, and the other. And now we're worried about North Korean troops coming to Ukraine. Shouldn't that be a good sign for the West that North Korea has to get involved? Like that's what they're trying to say, at least. But they also use it as a fear-mongering tactic, and I think that is very funny. Don't be easily fooled by stupidity, please, people. Here is another article talking about the same thing. This time they've gone a little bit further, and now they're making claims that the North Korean soldiers have gone AWOL. So less than 24 hours ago, the stories became prevalent that North Korea was sending soldiers. And then less than 24 hours later, we already have Ukrainian intelligence saying 18 North Korean soldiers have gone AWOL near the Ukrainian border. Bullshit, dude. They're just lying. This is just lies. I don't, and I can't believe that people are stupid enough to believe it. Ukraine is down so bad at this point that everything that you read that has some sort of bias for Ukraine is going to be amplified and signal boosted to no limit, and we're never going to hear the end of it. So be prepared for a lot of these stories. But a Ukrainian news site citing intelligence sources, citing unnamed intelligence sources within the Ukrainian government, says that servicemen left their position on the border between Bryansk and Kursk regions of Russia. Bro, Ukrainian intelligence is at a whole nother level. The Suspilini report, citing Ukrainian intelligence sources, said that 18 North Korean soldiers had fled their positions somewhere on the border between Bryansk and Kursk region of Russia, just 7 kilometers from the border with the state border with Ukraine. The sources said the reason for them absenting themselves is not known, but it is said that Russian forces were currently hunting them while the commanders in the area were trying to cover up the incident to hide from command. Yeah. Meanwhile, you're getting absolutely shit kicked in Kursk. Why are we talking about this? This is so negligible, even if it was true. Even if this was a true story, it is so negligible. The whole purpose of it is to make Russia look incompetent, make it look like the North Koreans are desperate to leave. This is so, it's just like peak, it's like propaganda. It's like, if you're so stupid that you can't see through this, you're the target demographic. Congratulations. Like, this is so hard for me to even read and not be like, oh, they just think that we're actually retarded. Like, that's what they think of us. They think that we are mentally incapable of seeing through basic lies that are very clear. So yeah, those are the articles that I wanted to talk about today. I think that that's wild. I think it's wild that people are believing it. Like, serious analysts are talking about, serious analysts, people who consider themselves to be serious, are talking about this like this is a real thing. Not a single shred of proof has been presented in any sort of way either. It's just he said, she said, hearsay, this, that, the other. Yeah. But Ukrainian intelligence is so good, they know that North Korean soldiers, they know where they're at, they know where they're stationed, and they know that they've gone AWOL and that the Russians are hunting for them. Sure. You don't even know where your own army's at. What are you talking about? I often hear NATO underreports technical specs, Russia overreports, i.e. U.S. artilleryman claims public range for Xcaliber is low. Seems sus. Thoughts? I don't think that that's true. but I also have never fired an Excalibur round in combat. I don't know the technical specs of that artillery shell, through and through. Just like I don't know the whole all the technical specs of the Krasnopol Russian artillery round. I don't know if it's being overstated or anything like that. So I honestly don't know. But I don't think that that's the case. I don't think you would ever undermine your weapon system to keep it secretive and keep it. Like you want everybody to know what you're capable of. That's the reason to have a strong military. That's the reason to have these weapons. It's the reason why a lot of like the secret stuff, like stuff will be secret when it's in development, but the second you get something, especially something that heavily affects things like your nuclear triad, the whole reason you build these weapon systems is to show them off, right? The hypersonic weapon systems that we have or we're developing and that the Russians have, they're a deterrence. You want to use them. You want to show how they're used. You want to demonstrate their effectiveness. So yeah, I don't think that there's any real reason for them to be underplaying the effective range of their Excalibur round. But I hope that answers your question. Yo Scott, Chesavyar or Pokrovsk, which falls first? If fired if fired to guess. Odds Putin will sit down with Alinsky one day. Zero. Zero. I think that there are zero chances of negotiations now. So I would just not even be looking at that realm at all. It seems, according to reports, the lines are basically dead. There's no communication between Moscow and Kiev. Very, very little communication between Washington and Moscow right now, at all. I think Moscow might be waiting for the new Trump administration to come in. If they ever come to the table, the terms are going to be so beneficial for Russia, it's not really going to be a negotiation. It's going to be a capitulation, right? So we're not really looking at negotiations like a ceasefire, anything like that off the table. I would say almost 0% chance of that happening, right? However, if there's regime change and Zelensky's not the person in anymore, or if the Washington comes to them and says basically, I've seen reports that Washington and Britain are coming very close to saying we're going to stop giving you support if you don't negotiate now. So that could be very much on the docket. But any negotiation like that, I wouldn't really call it a negotiation. I would almost call it, it's like you're trying to create terms for your own survival. So if you want to call that a negotiation, sure, but it's going to be from a position of complete weakness. Thank you for your questions, guys. All right, I'm done. I'm done with my topics today. So if you guys have some more questions you want to get in, go ahead and start asking. I'll be looking at the chat a little bit more. And remember, if you want your question answered, absolutely, you can ask that through Super Chat, and I always get to all of those. Oh my God. Oh my God, I'm thirsty, guys. Oh my God. All right. So you're covering the Ukraine war. Name every shell fired by every battalion and every battle else. Oh, so you think you're an expert, huh? Well, name every Ukrainian soldier right now. That's very funny. Question. Did you see the horrific Israeli attack on the hospital tent? Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of I'm at the point where I'm so cynical about all that that I almost don't want to talk about it anymore. It's it was horrible watching those people burn alive. If any of you don't know, my dad was in a bad plane crash when I was a baby in my mama's tummy. He's a pilot and he was flying a single engine, or no, he's flying a King Air. So it's a single engine, two engine. Can't remember. Anyway, had an engine failure. I think it's a single engine, and he laid it down in a field, and there was a moss-covered boulder. His plane got wrecked. He got fuel on him. He got lit on fire. He was up in the mountains. He should have died, but there was a an ultra marathon runner that would just happen to be up in the woods. She ran like 56 miles down to the ranger station and got a medical helicopter evac up there. So a little personal story here. And when I watched those people burn, it is horrific, dude. Watching anybody burn alive, first off, is like one of the most terrible things to see, smell, witness. It's horrible. Watching innocent people in hospital beds hooked up to IVs burning alive and not being able to escape is one of the most evil things I think I have ever seen in my entire life. And you can blame Hamas. Let's say that the entire refugee camp was filled with ammunition and leadership, right? This is unexcusable. There is no excuse for striking a refugee camp full of innocent people. There is no excuse for striking a hospital facility in a tent inside of a refugee camp, inside of an open air prison. The only reason the refugee camp exists is because of your previous actions of bombing people's homes into an oblivion, right? The only reason you need refugee camps and you need hospitals in these refugee camps is because of your indiscriminate bombings. And now you're indiscriminately bombing refugee camps and hospitals and burning people alive. That's a genocide. That's ethnic cleansing. And I'm so cynical about it now because the US doesn't care. We do not care about these people who are suffering. We do not care about these people who are dying. We do not care. We're letting them do everything they want, and we're continuing to give them weapons. There has not been a single statement made about the situation, other than there has been some rumors that the U.S. has come forward and has said, basically in a letter, that you have to improve the humanitarian situation in Gaza within the next month, or we're going to, conduct an arms embargo, or, something like that. It's like, I haven't been able to tell if it's actually serious or not, or real. There's been, half of the people are saying it's not true. Half of the people are saying it is true and it's happening. But when you're looking at that, why not say it needs to improve today? Why are you saying it needs to improve in a month? Well, what date? What's the date? Oh, it's October 15th. What happens in a month? Oh, that's right. The election happens in a month. So we're pretending that you need to fix the situation so that we can get votes before the election. And then after the election, after those 30 days, I bet you that humanitarian situation doesn't improve and the weapons keep coming because Israel is an extension of the US foreign policy. Israel is a forward operating base for the United States in the Middle East. I'm going to keep making this point over and over again because there's a lot of people out there who disagree with me. I don't care. You're wrong. It's very clear and present. If you just look for 2 seconds, you can see that Israel's foreign policy is lining directly up with U.S. foreign policy in the region. And other than the fact that I don't think Washington wants a escalated war with Iran right now, they're fully on board with everything Israel's doing. So we are guilty by association. We are guilty by involvement. We are guilty, guilty, guilty. Was the strike on the mess hall just luck, the product of saturation attack, or evidence of Israeli aid degradation? All of the above. Every single time you conduct a drone strike, there's some amount of luck involved, right? From the penetrator doing damage to whatever you're hitting. So if you're striking a building like we saw in regards with this cafeteria strike or mess hall strike on one of the IDF air bases that resulted in like 5 KIA and like 60 injured. So there was some luck in the amount of damage that was caused. But they did know that they were celebrating Yom Kippur. They did know that what time they ate at, so they targeted the building at the right time during chow time, and there was no Israeli warning in the region because they did not have an idea that drone was on approach. So it's all of those things. It is all of those things combined. Additionally, the drone was reported to have fired 2, I think, SA-5 unguided rockets before the actual kamikaze drone hit. So that's just another sort of interesting thing that Hezbollah seems to be doing, is equipping their kamikaze drones with additional munitions in the form of unguided rockets. Good question. Buddy over at History Legends actually tweeted this about the Kursk invasion. It was a bold idea that was worth trying. Sometimes I wonder about him. Well, I actually kind of agree with him here. It was a bold idea worth trying because if you really look at the overall situation, and unless you're willing to negotiate, which Ukraine isn't, right? So that's off the table. So that would be the smartest decision, right? That's the number one option in my book. Negotiate, get whatever good deal you can right now, make your amends, say your apologies, cut your losses. Zelensky, get out of there because you're going to either die or be in exile and probably die in exile or some. It's not going to be good. His story doesn't end good. So try to get the best deal you can for Ukraine. Do whatever you can. That would be my best option for the Ukraine in general and the current regime because this doesn't end good for them. If you continue this, there's no chance of this ending in a beneficial way for Zelensky and his crew, right? So it was a bold idea. The defense in the East wasn't working, right? They were being ground down. It's either death by 1,000 cuts or you gamble it all and hope that you can change the equation. That's what Kursk was. It failed because they didn't have the resources, and the Russian army isn't incompetent, right? They just backed off until they out extended their logistics lines, and then they've just been destroying them. So, I mean, it was worth a shot, I would say. It was a rather unfended area. The PR was really good in the beginning. They did get some exchange fund guys, but they just don't have the energy and the means to continue on further. So it was a bold a bold idea worth a try. Honestly, it is not to say that it, has no tactical advantages or strategic implications is wrong because it could very well have. If they would have reached that NPP, that could have changed the entire dynamic of this conflict. More escalatory potentially, a number of things could have happened, right? But that would have benefited Ukraine most likely. Any sort of change from the status quo would have been welcome because the status quo was death by 1,000 cuts. There's no chance of winning in the East, right? So you got to do something else somewhere. It didn't work, and it didn't work for obvious reasons. But I don't think that you can say that it was like a complete waste or a terrible idea altogether. I heard it from you first that Israel is a tool of the U.S. in the Middle East, like Ukraine and Eurasia. Suddenly, everything clicked, and I started making sense about it. Spot on, and thanks for your coverage of Ukraine war. And you, my friend, I appreciate that you have an open mind and you started to realize and you started to make the logical connections. But just again, I always caution: be very careful. Don't listen to everything I say as 100% truth or fact. I am fallible. I can be wrong. I'm glad that it's clicking for you. I'm glad that it makes sense. If something makes sense when you go over it logically again and again and again, you can really start to determine usually what's real. And when you look at the situation in Ukraine and you look at the situation in South Vietnam, you look at the situation with the ANA in Afghanistan, you look at the situation in Israel, you can see that U.S. foreign policy hasn't changed. The ideas are still the same. The way we go about things might be slightly different, but the foreign policy really hasn't shifted much. And the way we treat proxies, the way we treat allies, hasn't changed at all, and you can expect to see a continuation. The only place this ever comes into question is with Israel for some reason because of all of the Jewspiracy stuff and all of that, which, listen, I'm not here to argue any of that stuff. What I'm saying is that the people in Washington are the ones funding, arming, and supporting the people in Israel. If they weren't doing that, the people in Israel would be probably pushed into the sea, right? So Israel is a geostrategic absolute for the United States. We cannot lose Israel. Israel is our creation. We wanted it there. And we want it to continue being there because it gives us plausible deniability in the region to act like absolute demons. Like, there's no other way you can describe striking refugee camps and burning people alive. There's no other way you can describe it. It is horrible. It is deplorable actions, and we are the ones giving them the bombs to do it. So yes, good. I'm glad that you have come to that conclusion yourself. If Israel is the forward operating base for the U.S., why is there no military? There absolutely is. There absolutely are U.S. military installations in Israel. Have you guys not heard? It's like Site 514. We have a huge intelligence operation inside of Israel. We have radars. We just sent THAAD there. I mean, come on, guys. We give them everything. They have F-35s, F-16s. They are a shot for shot copy of the US military. We support their entire economy. Again, the whole dog wagging the tail, or the tail wagging the dog thing, it doesn't make sense. It's two heads of the same monster. They might disagree from time to time, and they might blackmail each other, and they might come into contact because there's different interests sometimes. But overall, the general goal is in the same direction for both of them. They both want the same end result. They want U.S. hegemony maintained. They want Israeli dominance in the Middle East. They want, the NATO to control all of Europe. They want the United States to control the South China Sea and all of the shipping lanes there. It's the same everywhere, guys, and you just have to open your eyes and just recognize the patterns. Really, that's all it is. This is just history repeating itself over and over and over again. I make predictions on these conflicts that come true sometimes. I mean, I feel like I've been doing a pretty good job recently of you know, understanding where these conflicts are going to go. And the only thing I do is go, what happened last time? Am I seeing the same thing happen this time? Oh, I am. Well, I think it's going to end the same way. It's betting with the odds, guys, and it's really not hard to do. Good question, though. There are U.S. military installations inside of Israel. And the reason why you don't have to have like U.S. troops there is because you have the IDF. They are U.S. troops. They will act in U.S. interests without a doubt at a moment's notice. So you don't need U.S. forces stationed there. That's a waste. Why have U.S. forces stationed in Israel when you already have U.S. forces in the IDF stationed in Israel? Right? You don't need to put your resources there. You can put your resources into Syria, which we're illegally occupying. You could put your resources into Iraq, which we are still occupying, what I would consider illegally because we just changed the government and said, oh, well, we're staying now. We did the same thing in Afghanistan. We pulled out of there now. We saw how that went. And, we have presence all over the Middle East. Why do we need to have presence in Israel when Israel is the presence in Israel for us? We don't need troops there. That's not how that works. And we do actually have troops there because we have sent the 101st Airborne to Israel. We have a pretty decently sized troop concentration in Israel as we speak. It is a forward operating base. It's exactly what it is. There's no way around that. You're wrong. We give them all the weapons for free. No bases in Israel. They didn't help the global war on terror either. Bro, the global war on terror is exactly what Israel wanted to happen the entire time. Benjamin Netanyahu was talking about it in in the early 2000s or in 1999. This has been his project for 30 years. He's been trying to get the US to go to war with Iran for forever. Have you never heard the seven countries in 5 years? Have you ever heard them talk about that? Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, Afghanistan, Iran, Somalia, and Libya. Those were their targets. They got through half of that list basically. Israel is finishing Lebanon and starting the war with Iran. This is the culmination of the global war on terror. So no, you're wrong again. We do give them weapons for free because they're our military. Why do you think we give them everything for free? Because they are conducting U.S. interests in the Middle East. That's why. It's not because they have blackmail on a few politicians. It's stupid. We've been doing it for 70 years. Stop lying to yourself. So is Russia and China fighting a lost cause then? In what sense? No, I don't think that Russia and China are fighting a lost cause. I think that Russia's beating NATO in Ukraine. I think that Israel is getting to such a point of desperation in the Middle East that they're actively trying to reach the point where they can use tactical nukes and destroy Iranian nuclear and oil facilities. right? That's how desperate the situation is. You don't want to ever bring that risk onto yourself. But Israel has it in their mind, for a very good reason that we've just talked about, that the US is going to come and help them no matter what happens. Probably because they're all talking about it behind closed doors and they all want this exact same thing to happen. Look at Lindsey Graham. There's a hurricane going on and he's talking about supporting Israel. Guys, this is U.S. foreign policy, pure and simple. But no, I don't think this is a lost cause for them. I think that Russia and China are getting very tight, and they are going to become the peer competitor. It's not going to be China, right? Because the U.S. can outcompete China, in my personal opinion. Maybe not in population, but we already have the hegemony, and it's much easier to maintain the hegemony than it is for a new country to overthrow that empire, right? So I think the U.S. could beat China head to head in terms of economics and everything, but we are failing everywhere else and ruining that equation for ourselves. So we've pushed Russia close to China, we've pushed Iran, India, North Korea, all together. And now that is the near peer enemy, right? You're not just talking about China being our enemy or Russia being our enemy. It's the Asian alliance now that is the enemy of the United States. And I'm very concerned that we are going to reach a 1984 style situation in the United States where we have no freedoms, we have no ability to, we don't have, we basically go from the republic to the empire. Sort of that, the switch from the emperor, from the Senate to the emperor. I think that that's where we're coming to, because we just can't compete with dictatorships around the world. I think they're outperforming us because of the amount of control they have, especially China, which worries me greatly because I don't think the government should have that insane amount of control. But we're going to be at this position where we're constantly at war. We're at war with, the Asia Pacific. We're at war with Europa or whatever. The same as it was in 1984. Keep you distracted, keep constant wars going on, and keep you in fear. I think that that's the goal. Bro is upset he pays for the chance to argue. No, I mean, it's good questions, right? And this is if you're asking these questions, you are at least demonstrating that you have the ability to think, right? Even if you disagree with me, that's fine. Disagree with me. Come at me. I want to hear these things because it helps me improve my position. I don't want to argue from a position of ignorance, right? That's never smart. It makes you look like an idiot. So I get what you're saying. It is funny that they're arguing with me, but it's sound arguments. I understand the reasoning behind it. You just have to look a little bit deeper. Yes, global war on terror was for Israel. They didn't participate. We paid the bill with blood. Yeah, but also, again, it wasn't for Israel, right? It wasn't really, that's not what it's for. It's U.S. interests. Israel is U.S. interests. So yeah, we went and fought these wars, but it's not because we wanted to do it for Israel. It's because we wanted to control the Middle East. That's the petrodollar. It's way more important to us that we control the Middle East, the United States does, than Israel. Israel, again, is just an extension. It's our 51st state. That's how you have to think about it. We want to control the region. We invaded Afghanistan. We invaded Syria. We invaded Iraq. We bombed Libya. We did all of those things. We funded the Saudi Arabian war against Yemen for 8 years, which was, again, ethnic cleansing because of the way that they went about it, cutting off, food and stuff into the country. There was one of the highest areas of starvation. That's crazy. That's crazy that we supported that. It's not crazy, actually. Now that I'm saying it out loud, all we do is support this stuff. So, no, I don't think it's actually crazy. I think it's very sane, and it makes a ton of sense. Site 512 is the secret base in Israel, maybe more. Yeah, secret because you can see it on satellite. Yeah, 512. So thank you. That is the base that I'm talking about. We do have military installations in Israel, absolutely. And even if we didn't, let's just say we didn't, who pays for all of Israel's military installations? The United States. So They are our military bases, whether you want to admit it or not. We didn't get any oil contracts though. Yeah, but we had, I mean, I don't know what you mean by that. We had control over Saudi Arabia for the last 20 years, basically. I mean, we had, they were in our pockets. So, all right. All right, guys. That is an hour and 9 minutes. If you have any more questions, let's see. Question. How much territory does Ukraine need to lose before they will sign a peace treaty capitulation? I think that that's never going to happen until the regime changes in Kiev. So, as soon as the regime changes, that's when you're going to see the negotiations. Whether that's a Western forced regime change, whether that is an internal regime change, or whether that is a Russian regime change, time will tell. Will Ukraine try to invade Transnistria? No, probably not. They might, but I doubt it. I don't think the Ukrainians have the option to do that right now. And I don't think it's really what Moldova wants. I don't think it's what Washington wants. I don't think that that's what anybody wants. Why would the U.S. let IDF soldiers get killed when American conservatives are so gun ho for sending their kids to die? By keeping, because no, what? No, 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 no. The U.S. domestic population, the U.S. citizens do not want another war in the Middle East with our blood being spilled. We want to support Israel in their wars if we need to. We want to help them with airstrikes and stuff like that potentially. But a war in the Middle East, another forever war in the Middle East would be, it would be our Suez moment. I've said this multiple times. If we go to war with Iran, it is going to be the Suez moment for the United States. It is going to be the moment we lose our hegemony on the planet. I'm telling you. So we don't want to go to war. We don't want to, but there are escalatory situations that are arising that are giving us no options, right? We want to control the whole place peacefully. Why would we want to spend money on a war when we don't have to? We would just pillage and loot the entire region if we could, because that's so much cheaper and more, profitable. Doesn't make any sense. Netanyahu disobeys the Biden admin. Does he? Does he really disobey them? Does he really? Or is he exactly who they want in power? Somebody who is willing to at least the theatrical aspects of this, because Netanyahu would not disobey the U.S. government if the U.S. government stopped giving him money and arms. He would start listening real quick. His behavior would shape up like that, right? Because his country wouldn't exist if we stopped. So yes, he does disobey the Biden admin the same way Kiev disobeys the Biden administration. They do it because that's how you gain plausible deniability for horrendous acts against humanity. It's so simple, guys. It's so simple. You just don't let them fool you. You want all of the anti-Semitic like side of this whole argument. I fully understand not being happy with Israel right now and all that, but it goes too far in my personal opinion. Just because it's not what it's about. It's not about Judaism. It's not about Israel. It's about U.S. hegemony. That's the important aspect. Guys, I'm going to tell you this, and I tell you this every single time I get on here. People in positions of high power are psychopaths. They do not care about Judaism. They do not care about Christianity. They are not Catholics. They are psychopaths who have worked tirelessly to reach the most sociopath, like the most like non-empathetic position in all of human history, which is like, the CEOs, world leaders. Those people are not normal human beings. They can't be. That chaff doesn't rise, right? The chaff that rises in that situation are the people who are ruthless, who are cutthroat, who will get things done. Those people don't tend to be religious. They think of themselves as gods. They're narcissists. So yeah, I just try to remove all that stuff because I think it's so distracting from what the real issues are and who's really to blame. Jews have always been a scapegoat. People are going to continue using them as scapegoats. I don't, because I see Jews in New York who are actively, militantly protesting what's happening in Israel. It is not a Jewish issue. It is an Israeli Zionist issue. And the reason why they have this issue, or the reason why the world has this issue, is because the U.S. funds, supports, and directs it. End of story. That's where I'm going to leave it. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Oh, wait. We got some more questions. Hold on. I was referring to the global war on terror. Yeah, no, I know what you were talking about. You can't make an argument without crying anti-Semite. No, what? I just said I understand the hate towards that group of people when it comes to Israel's actions in the region. You just want to make it all about that when it's not. And you're ignoring key aspects of this argument, and it makes you look dumb. I'm sorry. But if you're just going to say Jew, 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 that's not an argument, buddy. That's just so narrow-minded and stupid. And I'm not defending Israel or anybody. I'm not a religious individual myself. I could give a shit. I don't care about being anti-Semitic. If I need to be anti-Semitic or, anti-Semitic, I don't think I would ever be anti-Semitic because I'm not. But, they claim everything is anti-Semitism, just like the left claims everything is racism. I've been called Hitler a million times. That shit doesn't bother me, dude. I don't care. I'll be whatever I need to be. I'll say whatever I need to say. I'll talk shit to whoever I need to talk shit to. You guys know this. You guys know that I will call out each and every single person who does something wrong. And I think that your ideas about, everything, and the only reason I say anti-Semitic is because I don't want to say Jewspiracy 1,000 times, right? Because I think that's so stupid. I think it's narrow-minded and dumb, and you're excusing guilty people of their crimes. That's the issue. You are generalizing and going after an entire group of people for a select group's actions that is supported by my government. That's my problem with it. I'm all about free speech. If you want to be racist, anti-Semitic, I think it makes you look stupid as fuck, but you can go ahead and do that. I don't care. Freedom of speech, go for it. You have the right to say everything, and I think you should say anything because good ideas are very easily spotted, and bad ideas are everywhere, and you can just pick them out and throw them away. All right, that's where I'm going to end it. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really appreciate all of your support. Make sure you go and like, subscribe, leave a comment if you guys can. I really appreciate all of the support, and I will be posting that new Patreon video maybe tomorrow. I kind of just want to wait until my new mic gets in, because when my new mic gets in, the audio is going to be better and everything. So we'll see. But I really appreciate you all. That takes us to an hour and 20 minutes. Please be safe. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. The next live stream will probably be on Thursday. Hopefully I get that equipment in, and everything will be so much nicer for you guys. Take care. Be safe. Call your family. Something that I've been doing lately is once a week, I try to get into contact with all of my family. I get very focused on what I'm doing in my life, and I forget that there are people very close to me who could be just silently struggling, right? I talk to my dad all the time because guys don't have a lot of people to talk to. Make sure you guys call your dads, call your moms, just have conversations because you don't know when they're not going to be there anymore. I love you all so much. Take care. Have a great day.